Breaking news into HQ in a mammoth trade from the NBA before the deadline. It's Kevin Durant heading out of Brooklyn. Durant dealt to the Phoenix Suns just days after the Nets dealt Kyrie Irving. The Suns acquiring Durant for a bounty. 4 first-round picks, a 28-pick swap, as well as players like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder. TJ Warren goes the other way. So the Suns have a roster that now includes Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, CP3, and DeAndre Ayton in that starting lineup. But they give up a lot to get him. Let's get some perspective. Joined by Colin, Ward-Henninger, as well as Avery Johnson. And gentlemen, first up, reaction to this mammoth trade. Colin, I'll start with you.
Wow. The NBA truly never sleeps. I'm getting ready to watch a movie, sitting on my couch, getting ready to relax for the evening. And then, hey, Kevin Durant has been traded. To be honest, you probably saw the writing on the wall after the Kyrie Irving trade. The Nets did what they could in getting a couple win-now pieces in Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, but you had a feeling it wasn't going to be enough to keep Kevin Durant around. Remember, the Phoenix Suns were on his list of teams at the top of his list of teams when he made a trade request over the summer. So it's no surprise to see that they worked together to get him to the Suns. An absolutely mammoth trade haul. Surprised to see DeAndre Ayton wasn't in there, but Mikal Bridges is a better player right now and probably a better prospect for the future. Cam Johnson is an excellent young player. And then what we like to call in the business, all of the picks along with that. So mammoth trade, and obviously with Booker and Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton, this has to be considered one of the favorites to win the NBA title right now. Yeah,
no question about it. We'll get to how the Nets kind of reset the franchise here. But, Avery, I'm curious about your thoughts on how this stacks the Phoenix Suns in that Western Conference.
Well, patience is a virtue. Kevin Durant, if you remember last summer, after a couple of workouts in Los Angeles with Devin Booker, basically tried to force a trade to the Phoenix Suns. It didn't work out. So he had to basically go back and recalibrate and figure out a way to get back in the good graces with Brooklyn Nets ownership and management and his teammates. But I think in the back of his mind, he was always trying to figure out a way. And the reason why this happened is because of his good old friend Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie Irving forced his way out of Brooklyn. Then that basically is accelerated Kevin Durant's trade demands, which he and his team basically shared with Joe Tsai, Brooklyn Nets ownership, and Sean Marks. And this basically expedited his move to the place where he always wanted to be. And now that you have Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, who was going to be a part of the trade last summer, but now he's been savaged with the trade, coming off of a 35-point performance and playing extraordinary basketball. Man, you got to really watch out for the Phoenix Suns right now.
And Avery, by the way, that 35-point performance came in Brooklyn. Oh, by the way. Colin, this is a player in Durant who had 3 years after this season on his contract. So the Nets didn't have to deal him right now. They didn't have to deal him at the deadline. They could have waited until the offseason. Do you suppose Brooklyn was tired of having this cloud hang over them in terms of whether Durant would be okay with staying with the franchise and ultimately wanted to just reset and start anew?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It was clear that Durant was pushing for this move. But also, I think they found a trade partner in the Phoenix Suns that had a new owner who just took over officially a couple days ago, who wanted to make a big splash. And as I mentioned, this return is tremendous. Like, they did not sell Durant cheap here. They have tons of picks ready for the future and tremendous players, particularly Mikal Bridges. He's a borderline all-star, first-team, all-defense type of player. He's going to be a foundational piece for them if they decide to keep him. They also have the option to go ahead and flip Jay Crowder to a contender before tomorrow's deadline. And they have all these pieces that they can decide, hey, we want to try to stay competitive right now, or we want to build towards towards the future. So yes, there was probably a little bit of pressure to try to get Durant out of there because he wanted to leave. But I don't think they sold short on Durant. They ended up with, I can't imagine a better package than this coming back. So honestly, I think the Suns were desperate to make a move. I think Brooklyn were desperate to make a move. And I think they came together and each team got what they wanted out of this deal.
Avery, I want to get your perspective on that because you know about the players they got in the Kyrie Irving trade with respect to Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie. And then they add these players in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, as well as the draft pick compensation. Do you suppose this sets Brooklyn up to not necessarily take a step back, but to compete in the Eastern Conference?
Oh, Brooklyn is not competing in the Eastern Conference. These are a bunch of pieces that don't fit. You can have a lot of pieces, but in the Eastern Conference, it's the Boston Celtics, it's the Milwaukee Bucks, Philadelphia 76ers. Brooklyn is not a championship team anymore. You know, at one point when they had James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, if everybody could stay healthy, you know, they had a coach that was inexperienced at the time. You know, Jack Vaughn was an assistant coach, but Brooklyn has taken a significant step back. Remember years ago, Brooklyn tried to, you know, have a little bit of a quick fix by trading for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett.
Sure.
That didn't.
Of course.
So the Brooklyn Nets are not a contender. They're not going to be a contender for years to come, especially if they got to look up at that gauntlet of Chris Middleton and Giannis and Drew Holiday in Milwaukee, the Boston Celtics, even Miami, you know, with their roster and you know, some of the other emerging teams. But I'm really excited about the prognosis for the Phoenix Suns. And guess what? My wife and I were flying to Phoenix on Friday. There's going to be not only just the Super Bowl, but it's going to be a lot of buzz in the air with the Phoenix Suns. And I can't wait to see Kevin Durant step on the floor with DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and in front of this Phoenix Suns crowd.
I want to get both your takes on this, and I want to start with you on that front, Avery. Characterize the tenure for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn. One playoff series win, just 74 games total played together. Avery, start with you.
Well, it was unsuccessful. All right. It wasn't an even performance. It wasn't positive. It was a very unsuccessful performance. It was a failure, but failure isn't final. I talk to a lot of people like that when I give speeches all over the world, and failure isn't final unless you quit. Kevin Durant is not a quitter, and he's taking his championship experience to the Phoenix Suns, who went to the finals 2 years ago. He's going to be playing with, arguably, when he's healthy, a guy that's in the MVP conversation with Devin Booker. Times in the past when Chris Paul has gotten injured and Devin Booker felt like he was on an island by himself. Now he doesn't have to feel that way. He's got Kevin Durant. And now you have an emerging guy in their center, you know, that's playing, you know, at such a high level. So this is a great opportunity for Monty Williams to prove to a new ownership group that he can get the job done. So really excited about the prognosis for the Phoenix Suns.
And Colin, what are your thoughts on what transpired in Brooklyn during the tenure of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, as Coach mentioned, there's no way to look at it except an abject failure. And I think it's kind of a cautionary tale on, you know, we're in the player empowerment era, but allowing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to kind of dictate the direction of the franchise. It started when they signed and they brought on DeAndre Jordan, said, hey, give him $10 million a year.
Yeah.
That guy ended up being pretty much useless for them. And then as the years went on, they end up getting James Harden and kind of, you know, getting rid of a lot of their role players. That team was tremendous when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden were on the court together. It was only about 5 games, so we don't remember it. I do think that there is a lesson here, and particularly with Kyrie Irving and being able to play only in road games, which in turn drove James Harden to kind of want to leave the team. There is a lesson about giving the players a little bit too much power and kind of having a line drawn in the sand. That's hard to do when you have a guy calling the shots. But ultimately, we got a glimpse of what this tremendous basketball team, so at least offensive-wise, could look like. But when we look back at it, we're only going to wonder what if.
So let's go to the future and let's take a look at what the Phoenix Suns now have with regards to Kevin Durant in a starting lineup that is special, if you will. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. You see, Booker just rejoined the lineup after being out with injury. Durant is currently sidelined, expected back after the All-Star break. As this lineup moves forward, is this team second to none in the Western Conference? Avery, start with you.
Absolutely. This team can win a championship. And because they were able to save guys like Cam Payne, who, when he's healthy, he's a very capable backup. They have a bunch of other players that they've developed on the bench. But again, as you talked about earlier, this player empowerment movement hasn't been really successful. LeBron did it when he was with, not one, not two, but three in Miami, and that they won 2 out of 4. But this put Brooklyn in a significant bind. But the byproduct of that is Phoenix Suns, if they're not sold out for every game this year with their season ticket packages, you can march out a Chris Paul and Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton, and Devin Booker every single night as their big four to combat some of the other fours in the league, big fours in the league, like a Steph Curry, a Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Jordan Poole. Man, this is going to be very, very interesting in the Western Conference, because to be able to win 4 games in a playoff series in a 10-day period, this team is very capable.
Yeah, I agree with Avery, but let me just kind of play devil's advocate, rain on the Phoenix Suns parade a little bit here. Chris Paul is getting up there in age, right? We've already seen the injury issues, particularly come playoff time, that he's had trouble completing playoff series healthy. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Kevin Durant obviously has had knee injuries the last couple of years, the mileage with the Achilles injury. Devin Booker's been out this year. So when they're all together, I think they're going to be great. But if one or more of them are out, particularly in the playoffs, what is their supporting cast going to look like now that they've traded away a lot of what that supporting cast was supposed to be? So on paper, absolutely. I think the Suns are the favorite. I think the Denver Nuggets are going to have something to say about that. The Denver Nuggets pieces fit together a little bit better, and they've had the benefit of playing the entire year together. So obviously a few more moves that can still be made before the trade deadline, which could make some of the teams in the West shake out a little bit differently. But as of right now, based on the players that the Phoenix Suns have, they probably have to be considered the favorite to win the West.
There's CBS analysts Colin, Ward-Henninger, and Avery Johnson. Gentlemen, we appreciate the insight on the heels of 13-time All-Star Kevin Durant being dealt to the Phoenix Suns in a massive trade with the Brooklyn Nets. This is what the Suns are getting. Kevin Durant, his points per game for each team he's played for in the league. And you can see he's topped out at 29 points a game as a member of the Nets, like fine wine, getting better with age. But Colin talked about the fact that Kevin Durant has dealt with injury. First year in Brooklyn, missed the whole season with that Achilles injury. He's missed 20-plus games in each of the last 3 seasons, currently sidelined. And the Nets deal him prior to the All-Star break, prior to the trade deadline.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.